Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Ryan Bishop. I'm the National Accounts Director here at LynTec. What is LynTec? LynTec, simply put, is a power control company. We turn things on and off. We can do it remotely and using various communication protocols. But our company mission is actually to make it as simple as possible for you to turn things on and off. We are based in Lenexa, Kansas. We're right in the middle of the heartland. We are a UL 508A panel shop. So if anything comes in UL rated, it leaves that exact same way. We're also a UL 924 shop, so we can be a part of life safety systems. But yeah, LynTec has been around for a little over 35 years. We actually got started in the signal processing industry, and Lynn Potter, our founder, actually of LynTec, had a friend request that he help him make a sequencer for his house of worship to turn off their audio system. They kept getting a lot of blowbacks or a lot of maintenance requests because they weren't turning it off properly. So Lynn just sat down in his garage one day and cranked out a product that we actually still use today, or a version of it, the PDS-10. But this right here is actually more of our bread and butter. This is more what we specialize in nowadays. And this is our RPC panel line. So this is networkable control and the ability to actually turn these breakers off on and off at your leisure, and using multiple communication protocols across multiple zones on the same software GUI that actually lives on the controller. So what I mean by motorized breakers is there's some people that put a relay on top of a breaker panel, but this, I got TV behind me there. This is actually the Square D breaker that we use. This is the PowerLink G3 breaker from Schneider Electric. And if you've never seen the inside of a breaker, actually right here, what we're doing is actually breaking the connection using a little worm drive and a low voltage signal to toggle it. And of course, if we actually did have a hard trip, it will actually back off and not allow us to control that breaker anymore until the trip is cleared and we can resume operation. The nice thing about this, guys, as you can tell, this is not going to be what is in your standard residential application. This is a commercial breaker. While Home Depot does use them in their own facilities, you probably won't find this on the shelf in your big box stores. This guy is rated at 200,000 on-off-on cycles. So, usually I think the paperwork says on a standard average life cycle, that's about 50 years worth of on-off-ons. You may get there a little sooner or a little later than others, but that's what the math works out to be. But these guys and the motorized breakers actually come in versions that we can control of single, double, and 3-pole, 15, 20, and 30 amps. So the nice thing about that is that covers about 95% of your loads that you're going to find in your average performance AVL space. Of course, there are larger HVAC loads or maybe an external load that you're trying to control. But since we actually base the entire system off of Schneider Electric's platform, if they make it, because we're an OEM for Schneider Electric or Square D, we can actually purchase it from them and sell it back to you and figure out a way to control it. So while we can only control 1, 2, 3-pole, 15, 20, or 30 amp in the motorized, I can actually still add up to 125 amp unmotorized breakers in this panel, or any kind of external contactors using something that I'll touch on here momentarily, but our IOR cards, and we can try and figure out a way to control anything with an outbound relay that way. Another nice thing about Square D is that since they're one of the world's largest electrical companies, we like to tell our customers that we're not going to hinder your designs based on our abilities. We actually say, figure out your design first and come to us later, and then we can actually design our electrical panel around your needs. That way we're not tying your hands because we're limited to a certain number of breakers, or we don't have the capability to stay within a certain height requirement, anything like that. And what I mean by that is Square D actually offers us panel sizes as small as 29 and as large as 84. Now, a standard electrical panel that you'll see from any normal electrical contractor is going to be 42 positions. So since we can go as large as 84, that's actually 2 panels in the size of one. Obviously, I'm sure you did that math on your own just fine. But what that means is that it's going to save you a lot of equipment costs. Obviously, you'll have to buy double the amount of breakers, but if you were going to have to buy them anyways, then all we're doing is adding that equipment space into the same can and spreading out the cost of our controller across the additional breakers, and we actually become extremely cost competitive at that point. That's really where we save a lot of people money, is the fact that we can put twice as many breakers as most of our competitors can into one package. With our RPC line and our controller, we can actually control with each one a total of 168 breakers. So actually, with the standard 42 position panel, that math works out to be one master and three slave panels. So as long as they're within 300 feet of each other, and we can get just your standard tray cable, 600 volt 18 gauge, within 300 feet of each other, and we can wire them together, we can actually control with the same software that I'll show you momentarily, with one controller. So again, the more we can spread out the cost of that controller across the number of breakers, the more wall space you'll save, and also the more cost you can, or reduce your cost, just because we're spreading out that cost across each individual branch circuit. Our RPC line also comes standard with a couple of fun things like brownout protection. That's when you get a sag in your power, and if it drops below a certain voltage threshold that is set by you, either the integrator, design build house, or the consultant, we will actually zip off certain circuits that are selected by you until power stabilizes for 5 seconds, and then we will reverse sequence back on in the order that is determined by you, once it's kind of safe to do that. That'll kind of be illustrated something like this, where we can actually zip off certain circuits, and I'll illustrate that in my web GUI presentation momentarily. But then as soon as that emergency is cleared, you'll notice that they will come on much slower than when they zipped off. Another nice thing about Square D is they actually have a couple of cool little features. Like you'll notice here, this is actually current monitoring. So all these little rings are actually where you would put your leads through for your HOTS going into the breaker or coming out of the breaker. And we can monitor your current at the branch level and then also at the phase level. So if you have any kind of big projects, or I know being energy conscious is a big talking point nowadays, we can actually assist you and your customers in that need. While it isn't the cheapest thing in the world, we do have that available for you. Another nice thing about Square D's panels is that we can pretty much do anything that you would ever think or want. So a standard RPC panel is going to have, well, depending on the size, a 250 amp backplane, and then it'll come standard with a 225 amp main breaker. Of course, we can do up to 250 amp main breaker in the same cabinet, or we can special order a 400 or a 600 amp backplane. Of course, your 400s are going to have about a 6-week lead time. They are going to be very expensive in terms of price, especially if you want to do a 400 amp main breaker. But of course, if that's what the design calls for, or that's what you need, we can certainly take care of that for you. In your 84 space, we do have a couple of caveats. The 84 space has to be an MLO panel, 400 amp MLO panel. We can't do a 400 amp main in that, just because it would exceed the 6'6" rule for most codes, saying the largest trip handle can't be above 6 feet 6 inches off the ground. Or we can also go smaller. Not everything's all about going bigger. On our 29 space panels, it's actually a standard 125 amp backplane with a 100 amp breaker would be your standard configuration. And of course, there's all kinds of sizes in between there. We could do a 65 space, a 48 space, a 42 space, or down to that 29 space, as I mentioned. Or we could even look at a legacy line, which has a 54 space if you needed something right in between there and didn't have or want the need for those extra breaker slots. This is our RPC controller. This is kind of what LynTec does. So of course, I'm not going to try and, we're just buying the Square D parts from Square D as their OEM, and we're building it out to your specification. This is actually what LynTec makes here in Kansas City. If it can be done in the United States, purchased or made, we do it here. Of course, there's our resistors, diodes, thyristors, things like that have to come from overseas. But actually behind the gray wall here is where all the magic happens. And this controller is what houses the GUI that kind of makes LynTec special. It's what makes the software point and click so easy to program and change at your whim. It's also where you would have your DMX coming in. Of course, we can use multiple protocols all from this same board. So we can actually use streaming ACN, DMX 512, Telnet, contact closures, any kind of get commands, or I should say any kind of front end system. Actually, two of the more well-known names in the industry actually have modules already published, with the third ready to come out with another one. They kind of got hindered by the quarantine, but hopefully they'll come out with their version of the modules soon. So a couple of front end systems actually do have some stuff already published, like Crestron, AMX, QSYS. That's kind of what I'm referring to. but they can absolutely send us commands and turn us on and off and toggle us. So this is kind of LynTec's bread and butter. That's what we're kind of known for. That is primarily what we, I would say, ship out the most of. Is this? This is going to be for new builds or complete renovations. I mean, these are full-blown breaker panels. The reason you would want to change or trip it here at the breaker is you could get rid of a lot of equipment that's in the middle. I'm talking about completely eliminating any kind of relay racks. If you have any kind of dimming racks that you may not need anymore for whatever your new design may call for, maybe you have wireless DMX lights that are dimming inside and you just don't need that dimming rack, but you still need power to come through somehow, we can actually still turn off and remove your equipment from the grid with this panel, and you don't have to worry about doing that within a dimming rack or any kind of add-ons. Now, if you had a breaker panel in your facility and you actually didn't want to get rid of it, we do have a couple of options as well. And that would kind of kick us over to the legacy line of products. And that's these guys right here. This is the PDS-10. So this is strictly retrofit. These are relay cabinets. That's 100% what these are. This is the version I mentioned at the beginning of my speech, that this is the version of what started the company about 30 years ago, the power delay sequencer. So this is going to be purely single communication only. I just talked about RPCs can network, and we do have a relay cabinet I'll show you next that does have the network ability, but this is single communication only. So this is going to be your contact closure or your push button driven model. We have 3 different models. We have a 4 relay model, an 8 relay model, and a 10 relay model. And these all run on the GE RR7 relays. It's open air mechanically latching. So all you're going to do is take your hots in one side. We'll actually take care of the switching internally, and then your electrician's going to bring it right back out. So you do have a high voltage side and also a low voltage side as well. So it will require a licensed electrician, but they shouldn't have to have too much wiring. Usually I'm told that these can go up in a matter of hours, as long as it's not a complete hornet's nest of a situation. And then your job as the integrator, design builder, consultant is you can take care of all this low voltage wiring. It's actually extremely easy to change. All we do is you have these 2-pin jumpers that come with it, and you can set your step rate between 1/8, 1/4, or 1/2 a second. And then we'll also give you 2 delay positions if you have the 10 relay model, anywhere between 2 seconds to 8 minutes. And basically the time just keeps doubling in increments. So if you needed to allow any new equipment to form a good handshake or anything to fire up and warm up before the next piece of equipment turns on, we do allow you to have that capability. The PDS-10 also allows you to be daisy chained. So you can kind of keep adding on and keep adding on as many as you need to outfit. Of course, after you get about 3 or 4 of them, we should probably, please feel free to give us a call and we can talk about design options, just because there may be a better or cheaper solution out there for you. But yeah, this guy's been around for 30 years. They're tried and true. It's easy. It's simple. There's not a whole lot of parts that can break. And of course, the GE RR7 relay will last a very, very long time. And we also have a DMX version of the PDS. The LCRP stands for Lighting Control Relay Panel. And then not pictured, we also have the SCRP serial controlled relay panel. So these will be very price competitive versus some of the other folks that are out there in the industry. Again, single communication only. They're really easy to hang up, and they don't require a whole lot of maintenance in the future. It's just pick your communication preference and go with it. This is the RPCR line. So while we have single communication protocol, this is our networkable or multiple communication protocol relay panel. There are a couple of differences. The first and the most important that I think is different is actually we upgrade the relay to the Panasonic HID relay. This will increase your amperage rating to 30 from 20. So you have a higher amp rating. Also, the Panasonic allows you to do 240 volts. So we can actually switch 2-pole circuits. That is kind of a big deal nowadays. You'll notice that the face it looks a little bit different, and that's why. But the nice thing is it doesn't actually take up 2 slots. So we can do a 2-pole relay in the space of 1 relay. And all you're doing is just bringing both sides of your hot in right here and on the back side and switching it. The RPCR actually runs on our IOR cards. So there's 8 positions. So the nice thing about this is actually we have a cabinet that can go up to 64 relays in the same cabinet. And that is in multiples of 8. That's what I was going with the IOR card is there's 8 positions on our in-out relay boards. So 8, 16, etc., all the way up to 64. So if you get more than 3 or 4 of the PDS-10s, you're starting to kind of get into a larger relay cabinet territory. So you might as well, if it's going to be about the same cost, have all the bells and whistles of being networkable and have a little bit better relay and a little bit easier and more central location from one cabinet versus daisy chaining a couple of these. But we do have this available. As I will actually share my screen with you. And what I will do is show you, this is the GUI. This is what lives on the LynTec controller. Once you buy it, you own it. There's no franchise fees, no licensing fees, no firmware update fees, no yearly contracts, none of that. Unless there's an absolute need for a firmware update, we believe in if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So you really shouldn't have to bother us at all here at the factory unless you really do have a true warranty or something does go wrong. You can always call us and we can do these Zoom meetings and actually walk you through our screen and kind of do some comparisons to see what's wrong. But this is it. I realize it's not the most flashiest thing in the world, but then again, you are probably going to be the only person that ever really probably sees it, to be honest, unless you're teaching some other people how to use it. But the nice thing about this is it is point and click. So you can control or program practically everything about our system with the touch of a mouse. So right here you have your status page. So if you wanted to give a front of house employee or volunteer access so they can see what's going on, if there is a problem, you can absolutely do that. But also from this GUI, what we can do with our networkable line is actually control the breakers and turn them on and off. So as you can hopefully hear through my microphone, we can turn them off individually at the branch, or we can do it by zone control, and we can actually turn things on and off. I'm not sure if you can hear that or not. Hopefully you can. But we can also control it by the zone. One of the cool things about our system as well is you can actually create a zone, and our network controller can handle up to 9 additional IP addresses. So what that means is not only can you control one unit, but we can actually use this red zone, for example. This is what denotes the red zone right here under the address. As you can see that we have a couple of different pieces on the XPC line, which you'll meet momentarily, but we can actually set those all up. So with the push of a button, you'll notice everything starts clicking on and off. And then we're going to go back to the top. So using multiple protocols, we can actually go across different devices, and we can actually change the sequence or the step rate in between those devices as well. So that's just the control we can do. In order to set it up, it is as simple as going to the setup tab up here, and I'll kind of walk you through all the options. So the first is the setup home, where you can set up a password if you need to, set the clock or the astronomical clock. Under the network tab, this is where we can, the network controller is going to come out with a static IP address. Of course, you can change that IP address, or you can hook us up to a DHCP server if you want to and start handing out addresses. You are welcome to do that. And then right here is where you can add up to 9 additional IP addresses for control. And if you wanted to set up a network to allow outbound communications, or kind of whatever you would like to set up on your network, but if you wanted us to, we can send out communications that will alert you of any kind of breaker trip, brownout, emergency override, or emergency lighting on recovery. So when the system does come back online, if you do have current monitoring, if there's a temperature by the threshold you would set, branch over current, or even a phase loss, we can send out some notifications. The protocol tab will give you up to 4 starting addresses of DMX here. Of course, those zones can be programmed 2 different ways. You can do single address DMX. If you wanted the entire panel to turn on with DMX address 1, for example, we can do that. Or if you wanted to stagger the DMX addresses, we can absolutely do that and sequence that DMX address as well. And of course, we will allow for 4 universes of streaming ACN control that can be set up right there. Skipping over, we're going to do panels last, but skipping over to the contact closures tab. Here's where you would set up all your contact closures. As I mentioned in the beginning, we are a UL 924 shop, so we can be a part of your emergency shutoff or emergency lighting systems if we need to be. We don't have to be. They could be just free contact closure ports. But this is where you would program all of your contact closures. Normally open, normally closed. We can merge anything together if we need to. And then over on the schedules tab, I haven't seen by changes, I know. On the schedules tab is where we could set up any kind of lights coming on and off with dawn and dusk. We could do a sweep off Tuesday at 1 a.m. if you can guarantee that nobody's supposed to be there and they have, they like to leave the lights on at the end of the day. We can absolutely do a sweep off just to save your customer power or any energy costs, anything like that. Or if you just wanted to allow the processors on these new high-end lights and audio equipment to turn off and kind of reset, give them a break for the day, for example, we can do that as well. And then this is where all of the magic happens. So as I mentioned, as long as you can point and click, you can pretty much program our entire system. You'll notice here that we have a couple of different rows or zone control. So here's the red zone that you saw in the very beginning. If you look over on the right, we'll give you 12 zones of control to start off with. So this will allow you to use multiple protocols over multiple zones to control your entire panel. And changing any of zones, or if you're programming from the beginning, like these white ones have now been assigned, you can actually just simply click the zone you want to highlight, go here to the middle, and you'll also notice this is a sequenced zone. That is important to point out. And it is part of the amp rack. We can change that wording, but we can go down here to add, and now you'll notice that it is as simple as clicking it, and it made it part of the red zone. If you do not want it to be the last in the sequence, you'll notice right here the step sequence or the sequence number is right here. We can change that around and you'll notice that it's increasing. Not only is it increasing here, but it's automatically adjusting the rest of the sequence as well. Our sequences will give you anywhere between 25 milliseconds up to 8 minutes, kind of like the PDS-10 single legacy panel. So you can have some predetermined options for you. And then we'll also give you 2 custom delays up to 999 seconds each. The nice beauty of this is we can actually change the step right in between each branch circuit. So this is not the sequence. You're not determining the sequence for the entire zone with this. You're actually choosing between the number of sequence and the next spot. So we can actually go up here to additional ones in the red zone, and we can actually change and modify each individual branch to be different from the rest. Or they could all be the same. If you wanted it to zip on or zip off, we can absolutely do that for you as well. The ELV right here, this is part of that UL 924 certification. So this is where you would check to have that branch circuit be part of the emergency override, the emergency lighting, or V actually stands for voltage. So I mentioned the RPC always comes with brownout protection automatic. This is where you would have it be a part of that zone. And of course that threshold, if you look on the left side of your screen down here, is the voltage is set by you. It will automatically predetermine your plus and minus. The percentage is based on what the voltage is, but you'll notice that everything is adjusting accordingly. Of course, I'm going to leave it on 120 because that's what we have here in the office, but so that is as simple as making us a part of the UL 924 certification, any kind of life safety systems. Of course, if you had multiple products like the XRS-80 or the MPAC, this is the exact same way you would change them across multiple breakers. And then again, you can change the number in the sequence to whatever you would like it to be. This is a relay panel, so it's not going to pick up a DMX signal because it's not inputted. Otherwise, it would be available. Oh, the blue zone. There we go. Blue zone is set up for streaming ACN. So, of course, here, if we had a different universe programmed, we can do all the changing from there as well. And should anything awful happen, right here on the left-hand side, we do have the circuit numbering and address scheme. So in case an electrician accidentally installs the interior upside down, please do not fear. We can change this, and you don't have to reprogram your entire system. But it is important to note we can change some things around at your leisure. So this is kind of the software that lives on the LynTec controller. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. And that is the same version That is with all of these different products. I'll introduce you to the XPC line here in a second, but we don't have different versions for the RPC versus the relay versus the XPC. It's all the same. So as long as you have one controller, that software is always going to be available to you to control either up to 9 additional devices or up to 168 different breakers. And this is the XPC line. So we got a little something for everybody. If you need a brand new panel or brand new building, we can do your breakers. If you just have a retrofit application, we can absolutely do a relay panel. But something else we came out with about a year ago, so we're still kind of rolling out with this, is the XPC line. So this is the same amount of control, just in a rack. So we have a couple of different pieces. The first being the NPAC, and that's what's going to be pictured here on the screen. The NPAC stands for Networkable Power Automation Control. So this guy is 2 RUs, and he is an 80 amp unit. It actually has 4 20 amp inputs on the back, and most importantly, it has the brain built in. So the software, so you don't have to worry about buying a relay or a RPC big panel or anything like that. It actually has the brain built in. So this can be a self-contained unit. And this is also going to have the Panasonic relays inside of it, which gives us the ability to do 2-pole switching in the NPAC as well. So we have 4 models, 2 models at 120 volt and 2 models at 240 volt. So you're either going to have the ability to switch at the duplex level with a 120-4 or 220-4, it has 4 relays, or we could actually switch at the individual outlet level as well. So a 120-8 or a 240-8. And of course, we'll have your DMX coming in and your contact closures, or any kind of networkable cable can be run over there for streaming ACN, or hooking up to a switch and controlling other devices like the rest of the XPC line. So if you had a rack mounted unit, we have a couple other pieces that can round out our line, like the XRM20. This is a 20 amp unit. We control 2 duplexes. You will have to LAN power locally and get a network cable to it. But the nice thing about this is we'll give you 4 predetermined holes on the back that should fit in a universal truss clamp. So if you needed power up in a truss, we have a 30 amp version. So if you needed a 30 amp on the other side of the stage controlled, but you just have that one little circuit that you need, we can actually help you out with, it has a standard L530. I don't have a model here to show you. There's a picture of it actually down there. But we do have a 30 amp version where you LAN power locally. We can get you 30 amps of control. It's a single outlet. Or something I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with is the XRS20. This is our standard 20 amp sequencer. It does have 3 duplexes on the back that we're controlling. So a total of 6 outlets of control plus 1 courtesy outlet. So we'll actually be controlling here, this duplex, this duplex, this duplex. And of course, there's your network cable. And then there's the front. I'll actually zoom in on it for you. This one's not plugged in, but you have your lights and a simple rocker switch. This was not designed to be used as solely a standalone rocker switch sequencer. It does actually have some internal components that allow it to be hooked up to the whole venue control. So basically, we're not going to be competitive in terms of price for just a standalone rocker sequence. We understand that. But in terms of whole venue control, if you need 9 different pieces, we'll actually be able to help you out and be very cost competitive. In terms of adding 9 or 10 different sequencers and trying to piecemeal everything together, we can provide a solution for you. Of course, if you didn't want to do a 2RU 80 amp unit, we also could just do a couple of different sequencers or modules and just offer the XPC. So if you just wanted the brain, if you just wanted the ability to get the software, we can absolutely control with a 1RU controller, and then you can kind of piecemeal your own system or create your own system based on your needs. If you have a huddle room or a different part of a building or commercial space that you need to have control in, we can give you one central location for that control and then spread out your power as you need to. And then last but not least, the XRS80. This is a 80 amp unit as well. It's 18 RUs, but this guy is hardwired. So while these pieces do not need a licensed electrician, you can actually handle that. This guy does. It's a standard 9-wire, so it's not unique or different, but we are controlling 4 20 amp units right here, the light bulbs. And then of course you'll need to LAN power locally, but if you have a obscure or off-site rack, we can absolutely get control for you from one central location as well. So that's kind of the overall quick rundown of our product line. We do have some other stuff that I didn't show you here today. We don't have it on this wall. We don't manufacture a whole lot of it. It's kind of going by the wayside as people gear towards the networking ability. But the legacy line of products, we can do load centers, and we can also do single communication panel boards. So while the RPC is kind of our bread and butter and what most people usually want to talk about, if you only needed a MSP modular sequencing panel board, so if you only needed contact closure, we actually can provide you with that, and it is a little bit cheaper. The breakers are not as robust. It is a little bit more labor intensive in terms of install. It has the old style, old school 60-inch leads on the breakers, and they're going to be much smaller, much more like your small commercial or residential application, whereas these guys have a much higher interrupt current rating, and also they are, as I mentioned earlier, simply put, by attaching it bolt on to the bus bar here. Everything from LynTec does ship fully tested and fully assembled. So you have a little bit of peace of mind knowing that what you order is what's going to be showing up. We triple check everything before it leaves here. So if there is a problem, usually we just kind of have to get on the phone and backtrack and figure out where the mistake was made and just kind of do the opposite. And usually you're all fired up and ready to go. They're as simple as actually just uninstalling the 4 bolts down here in the corner, taking the interior out, putting the can up, putting the interior back in, making sure everything is wired in the right spot, and you're good to go. So yeah, if there's any questions I can answer, if you need any design help, I usually look at panel schedules and one lines all day long and try and either help figure out how to consolidate best or how to save money if we need to go to a single communication panel board, anything like that. Please don't hesitate reaching out. That's what I'm here for, answer questions. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have a great day.